Today on Locked On Rockies, an interesting comment in the Locked On Rockies YouTube question has me asking a pretty interesting question. Are you rooting for the Rockies to make history?
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock on Rockies fans, welcome back into the Locked On Rockies podcast for today. I am Paul Holden, your host of the Locked On Rockies podcast, free and streaming on your favorite streaming services. It is the 18th of July, and I know I'm scrambling right here because I did a hilariously dumb thing right before I started recording. I signed myself out of my Gmail stuff, which had all of my stuff that I was going to use for the show. So I'm going to work on that while I also keep giving you the rigmarole here of this is the Locked On Rockies podcast for free and streaming on your favorite streaming services, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. If your team is the Colorado Rockies, guess what? You're in the right spot because that's what we do around here each and every day, free and streaming on your favorite streaming services and on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel right here, where you can fire off your comments, where you can get the send the feedback that makes me question and bring up ideas for episodes here. And that is exactly what happened for today's episode, because I've seen this a couple of times. I've seen this idea of wanting the Rockies to finish the season and be the worst team in history because it's an interesting storyline, blah, 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 puts the pressure on the organization, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to read the full comment here in just a second, but I want to dive into that and continuing in a little bit of my trends of what we need to see improve in the second half. It's got to start with the Rockies being a better team at home. We're going to dive into that and more on today's episode. Before we do, got to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So, over on the Locked On Rockies comment section here. Over here, and this is from Nate Roberts. Things I'm looking for in the second half. Will they be able to move some of the players for future assets? Can Veen come back up and show adjustments on the high fastball? I hope they don't get their 20 wins. No more on the bright side. Give them no choice but to acknowledge how bad it has been and is now. And I don't really think you can sit and fully disagree with that, where especially when you're already looking at and the response to this this season so far has been a promotion of your son, has been an internal hire. Yes, you've moved on from Bud Black, but again, that was something you easily could have done prior to the season and should have done prior to the season, especially with with where your plans for the offseason and where you were at anyway. I don't know how you really even convinced Bud Black to sign back up with it outside of a nice paycheck, obviously. But it's really weird. And I don't mean this in like a way of like I'm saying weird as in a like shaming type of way. It's just really weird to root for your team to lose, especially in a situation where losing doesn't help them get a better draft pick next year. They have to pick outside. It's in those rules, you got to be. So now the Rockies aren't even going to have a great draft pick next year. And it doesn't mean they can't get a good player and all that stuff. So in reality, the idea of being the worst baseball team historically, the team with the worst record, all that really accomplishes, I think, and when I initially kind of think about it, all that really accomplishes is getting like kicked in the chest as a Rockies fan, just like being totally just because it's insult to injury, because we already have seen the fact that this team has, this team isn't going to be super aggressive in looking outside the organization. Maybe they'll change. I mean, the question is, who knows what the rest of the season looks like? Because making, avoiding the 40, hitting 42 wins or not, the writing's already on the wall for some people. It should be. I mean, there is a lot there should be a lot of pressure. I mean, there is not a lot of, rainbows and sunshine about the Rockies right now, and there's no way for them to ignore it. There's no way for them to be sitting there and understanding. They've said so themselves. They've had people in the organization address where they're at. But at the same time, this is the Colorado Rockies we're talking about. Do we really do we fully deep down believe that this season is actually going to be the last straw that breaks the camel back and change it and starts leading to an avalanche of change for the Rockies? I think at some point when we've talked about this, because obviously this isn't the first time we've talked about this on the show, I think that this was more likely the case a little bit, I mean, maybe this was always the plan, right? Maybe this was the succession plan was always to go Walker Monfort, was always to go to that thing, was always to just that was always Dick's plan. He's got both his sons in positions of power within the Rockies. They have their control over Denver. The moves he continues to make on his end, it could be going exactly according to plan. The product on the field, we know hasn't always been a priority. It's not treated as a priority, yet he's one of the most, or he says it is. But with his tinkering and his involvement, the Rockies have not been a successful on-the-field product. So do I really think that this team that has a history of losing, that doesn't really know how to be a winner, that has never had a long, stretch of sustained success, maybe short windows of sustained success, I don't think that there's going to be a great, crazy mastermind turnaround. And again, there was some positive feedback about the draft this year. There are plenty of interesting guys that, coming up through the system, but it all just goes back to the core problem of, like, this is the team this is the Rockies we're talking about. As much of a cop-out as it feels like it is to say that you can point to example after example after example of that being the case, of the Rockies being the team that is not the norm, being the team that is not operating the way that other teams operate, being the team that cannot do things that other teams do, whether an inability to do so or a lack of willingness to do so. But it has to be, there's no way to avoid it, though. At the same time, if the Rockies do finish behind last year's White Sox in terms of record, it is impossible for them to ignore. There is no bright side to look at there. Because guess what? The All-Star game, with it over and having a guy to kind of root for to get there so they can have an opportunity to perform on a big stage, that's over and done with. Trade deadline's going to roll through. Other teams are going to be playing a lot more interesting baseball here. This is a grind. This is the Rockies season, is the remainder of it is just going to be a grind. They're going to have to grind out their wins to avoid this. So I think that this is going to be something where you are going to have to, there's no way you can avoid this. And even though it's not the most difficult media climate, there are people calling for accountability, and they are not going to be able to avoid the Chris Bryant questions that are also associated. I mean, that are just one fact. Just go down the list. It's the Chris Bryant contract mixed with the historic losing season, mixed with bringing Bud Black in to start the season. They're hiring from within, not looking from there. The list keeps going down, 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 and they will have no chance, but they have to respond. And if they don't say something, and if it isn't an actual long, lengthy press conference with good information, with actual detailing plans of what they are planning to do, there should be no trust in this team. There should be a lot of faith in this team. It's the weird thing of why, why would you be a fan of a team that does this to you? I don't know. Sports are weird. I think that's part of it. But I think Nate brings up an interesting point here. Because again, the headlines, the national attention, all of the offseason conversation, anytime the Rockies get brought up, they will just be associated with, are they bad for baseball? And you will be facing a reputation crisis that is only deepened. And I know I've brought up the reputation crisis before. So you're not already facing it. You are in the middle of this reputation crisis. And I just don't have a lot of faith in the leadership to navigate them out of this. But at the same time, I don't want to root for that. I can't root for it to be the worst season in history. That's just I just keep plain and simple. But there's a little bit more reason as to why that is. And I'll explain that coming up next, right here on today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Before we do that, though, got to tell you about the folks that help make this show possible, and that includes FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing. Baseball is back Friday. Now, here we are. The baseball action has returned from the All-Star break, and that means you got plenty of action on FanDuel. And whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? We just talked about how that's the rest of the season is going to be a grind. With FanDuel, you can get in on this game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. You can use FanDuel to track your favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. It's easy to use, fast to pay out, and makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. Whether you're placing a same-game parlay or watching a bet right into the ninth inning, FanDuel makes it feel like you are part of the action. New to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Yes, that's $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins at FanDuel. So open the FanDuel app today. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Locked On Rockies back with you here. Segment number 2 of today's episode of Locked On Rockies. We got Rockies baseball back in action tonight against the Twins. A home series here. We're going to talk about how the Rockies need to be a better team at home. That is one of the other things that must happen in the second half of the season. It's something that if we're looking for, if we, I know our guy Nate, who got the conversation started today, doesn't want on the bright side. If we are looking for the bright side stuff, it needs to be a surgence of the offense and the team's abilities to get games won, get the job done in front of the home crowd, no matter how many of the opposing fans might be filling the seats while they are playing there. I just kind of wanted to wrap up on this conversation of rooting for or hoping for the Rockies not, being the worst team in baseball history. And I totally see the very reasonable reasons why. And the fact of the matter that it's going to be difficult to avoid and difficult for them to not be that team. But I don't know, man. I couldn't just like hate watch the Rockies or something like that. Even when they're bad, even as much as I don't know, there's been a lot of bad watching this year. I can't lie. But I just can't put myself in that in a situation where I just want to actively root for them to lose. I don't get surprised, I kind of like in the back of my head while we're watching and things going through there, you can kind of just get, if you've watched enough of the games this year, you just get the feeling in your gut. And then your gut gets proven exactly correct on how things fall apart. But like, as critical as I am, as frustrated as I get on this show, as angry as I get, like, at the same time, this is my whole jam. This is what, this is why I do the show. I'm a big fan. So it's such an interesting spot to be in with the sports fandom moment where it's just like, I'm a little bit older, so you kind of just, the world, you got a little bit more world perspective when you got the sports. You just kind of see the way the sports interact and in the world, and then you just kind of also think about just how much time and energy and effort that you spend putting towards your sports fandom here. And I will forever, I'm not going anywhere, I'm not doing, there's no way, I'm not leaving the Rockies fandom. But you do start asking yourself a lot, you just ask yourself questions throughout your life, and you ask yourself questions, especially with the ways that you spend your time and the things that you care about. And for the Rockies to just consistently be missing the mark on what they try to do, and for them to be so unsuccessful at building and maintaining what when it is great, when it does work, is something that feels very unique, at least because it happens so rare, and other Colorado sports teams we're used to maybe some lulls but enough success for them. Nuggets is kind of a little bit more on the more recent side, I suppose. But so that's kind of my whole thing with not only is it more fun to talk about them when they win, and I can be fun, energetic and stuff for the show, but it's just like I've never faced this weird challenge in my life of just like of a team and of a sports team that I care about and root for being this bad, being worst ever bad. It's just such a weird spot to be in. And yet it's also like fascinating, because it truly is, though. It's like, because again, a sane and normal baseball organization there would be a ton of upheaval. There would be a ton of change coming this offseason. There'd be a ton of things happening. But when you ask yourself, do you really believe that? Do you honestly believe that this is what that massive change is coming to the Rockies? I mean, back-to-back 100-loss seasons weren't bad enough to continue for them to double down and for them to set the course for this season. Never winning the division hasn't really swayed them very much, and it's not fair to say. I guess they certainly have tried things. They have tried to do innovations. They have tried to spend money on certain players. They have tried to do certain things at certain times. That is true. But they need to prove that things are going to change with their approach to this trade deadline, with their approach to this offseason, with what they're going to do in the wake of this historically bad season. Because right now, the big move that's happened has been shocker. A promotion of his family, a promotion from within the Rockies organization. And the Bud Black thing, but I maintain that it's happened early enough, and it happened. It could have happened plenty earlier before that. I don't really think that's a huge needle mover, if I'm being honest. I think the roster construction and the performance and the injuries that the Rockies have dealt with are perfectly, whether it be under Schaefer or whether it be under Buddy. I still think they've been in a similar situation. Maybe not as bad if they had Schaefer throughout the whole start of the season, but that's just guessing, if we're being honest. So I'm not rooting for them to be I don't want the Rockies to be known as the worst team of all time. I don't want that label. Out of all the labels, that the not fun and the unenjoyable and the annoying labels that the Rockies already have, and what little attention gets paid to the Rockies, for them to carry the label for who knows? I mean, because what are the odds of a team being worse than the Rockies? Yeah, what are the odds of it happening to the White Sox? And then what are the odds of it happening to a team the next year? This is a mantle that will or a legacy defining moment here. 3 straight 100-loss seasons, with the third one being the worst season in baseball history. You got to respond to that. You have to have an answer. I'm not too certain that the Rockies will. I hope they prove me wrong, though. Hope the draft maybe is a sign. And I hope the players can prove us wrong, too. I hope the second half, the Rockies are able to show a lot more what they thought they were at the beginning of the year, what they thought they were coming into the year, with some guys that have got the experience. And I'd like to see them bring guys up, give them opportunities, and guys like Veen that Nate mentioned there, give them another opportunity and see what they can do. Because the Rockies got to learn, all this stuff we can moan and groan about the front office and all that stuff, and I can keep going on the 2-segment long, stretching it out type of stuff. At the end of the day, the Rockies got to win ball games on the field. They got to get the job done, and they got to get the job done at home, especially because it's been one of the most incredibly disappointing parts of this season has been the performances at home. We'll talk about that coming up next. Locked On Rockies back at you here for segment number 3 of today's episode, getting you ready for the return of Rockies baseball and the return of Rockies baseball to Coors Field, where the Rockies are 10-36 at home. I never in a million years would I have thought the Rockies would be that bad at home. Didn't think that a season like this would probably be happen, but so maybe call me ignorant and call me a fool here. But this is this is the moment for the Rockies to have to start righting one of the worst trends of the season here, which is their poor performance at home. The teams that are going to be coming through Coors are mostly good and are got the offense. Pittsburgh is kind of an interesting example here at the beginning of August when you're looking at, well, their offense isn't all that great, but they do have guys that can hit the ball. Remember, a guy hit the ball 513 feet in the home run derby that they'll see. Plus, they got really good pitching. You got again, we've talked about Minnesota and St. Louis being teams that are, at or above or slightly above 500, looking to keep fighting their way to solidify their spots there. Toronto certainly coming in, trying to stay hot there. And you got then you got your usual gambit with the NL West, and then leading here at the end of August and into early September, you have 3 straight series at homes, the longest homestand of the season, of the second half of the season, I should say. And if you go into that and you just drop all of that, say you win 1 or 2 out of 9 possible ball games. That just is going to complete that's going to finish the season off at home with such a whimper. Miami and Los Angeles and the Angels at home as the final homestand will be actually kind of an interesting thing. Most likely teams that are out of the mix there, teams that might be sellers as well, could be completely different. But when we're looking for prove it moments, when we're looking for this team to kind of to show off a little bit more, to be able to back up the statement of we're better than what our record says, we're playing better baseball, we're doing that things, it starts with being better at home. The Rockies are being bad on the road is something we'll have to live with, even though their opening series on the road could be pretty interesting for them here as they go through it. My point is, I think there needs to be I don't know how to make it, but it should be a little bit of an igniting factor when the crowd erupts for the opposition in your home ballpark. For these guys being so competitive as they are, for these guys, that has to boil some blood a little bit. And I think a great way to kind of, fight back at that, because again, it's people buying tickets and enjoying baseball. Again, you all know how I feel about that. But I think from the player's perspective, from that side of things, it's got to be annoying. And it's got to be annoying that you constantly feel like you're playing on the road. They have to be the ones that reestablish some sort of home field advantage. They have to be the ones that create that unfriendly environment that we know. that is one of the top priorities of there. As much as the road series, and every ball game and winning ball games is just important, I really want them to start winning more at home, because it means the guys that they're starting to look for in the future are starting to be able to take advantage of Coors Field a little bit more, get more comfortable playing on defense as well, get more comfortable with where you're at. It's got to just kind of just be a moment where I want to start seeing these reps start to pay off. Like I guess if we're looking for a way to, again, to kind of soften the blow of the first half of the season, it's okay. You had a first half of the season worth of reps. You had a half a season worth of reps. You've had games on the road. You've had games at home. You've felt the experience of what it's like to go on the home and road. Now is the time for them to start showing off that little bit. If they want to show that they can win ball games, if they want to, it's going to start by making it known that you can do damage at Coors. Being a guy that can, and we know that these guys, we know that people hit better at Coors. It's now just, it goes down to that execution. So it's a kind of, if the Rockies are to avoid that worst season, it's going to be because they play better ball at home. The ideal would be to play close to 500 baseball at home in the second half. It's probably going to be hard to make up the the record already from for your home and a road your home record there for the Rockies, but go for at least in the second half. Go for 5. You have 40. So what is that? 46 games left at on the road or at home. I can't actually. It's probably not right. I can't remember that number off the top of my head. Regardless, you guys know me in math. If you do that, if you stay close to that, you avoid that historical loss. If you can stay close to 500, scrap out a couple of wins on the road, that's the way the Rockies can avoid making history. Chris Paddock is taking on Kyle Freeland on the bump here, and it is going to be an interesting matchup here. Paddock is 3-8 with a 4.95 ERA, a 1.28 whip over 100 innings pitched. He's allowed 103 hits in that time, struck out 70, walked 25, and allowed 14 home runs. So we're kind of looking at a pitcher here that's comparable to Kyle Freeland when you're looking at him with his 1-10 record, a 5.44 ERA, a 1.54 whip over 89 innings pitched. 116 hits, 67 strikeouts for Kyle, 22 walks, and 9 home runs. So obviously Paddock's been able to go, has got more innings and it has the fewer hits and such. But maybe, again, a situation where get yourself on base, set up that situation, and the middle of the order, the power bats, the Hunter Goodmans, the Ryan McMahons, got to be the ones hitting the ball over the wall, because the Rockies are going to be dealing with one of the great damage dealers in baseball with Byron Buxton here, and the rest of the Twins lineup, who is certainly still in the mix and trying to make, start things off, as they are another team licking their chops at the opportunity to play the Rockies. But I think this will be a pretty interesting pitching matchup and an opportunity for there to be a lot of offense for both teams on this side. And we'd love to see the Rockies come out and jump out ahead early, setting the tone right after the All-Star break. Folks, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen of the day, go check out Locked On MLB and Locked On MLB Game Night. We also got you covered with all things Colorado sports with Locked On Broncos, Avalanche, Nuggets, and Buffs, all free and streaming on your favorite streaming services. You can find us on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel, where you can be part of the show. You can fire off your Rockies hot takes. You can let me know what's on your mind, and lots more. Until next time, folks, this is Paul Holden saying so long from the Locked On Rockies podcast.